SNK versus Capcom Match of the Millennium. This is one of a series of collaboration games that came out like 20 years ago. This is the one that came out by SNK for their handheld, the Neogeo Pocket Color. It was kind of mind-blowing that you could play a proper fighting game on a handheld. Until games like KOF R2 and this game, SNK vs. Capcom, we had other ports on Game Boy Color and the Game Boy before it, and they always felt like a bit of a waste of time. But this was the first time that I felt like a fighting game was playable on a handheld, and it actually worked. Like, it wasn't just a smaller version of a bigger game. It was actually designed for handheld to work. Instead of pressing like a button here for light and a different button here for strong, tap the button like this, you get a light attack, and if you hold it down, you get a strong attack. So the mechanics in the game was definitely one of the main reasons why this game worked so well. But the other thing is, as you can see from the emulator that SNK runs here for the official release of this game, they actually show you what the original Neo Geo Pocket Color actually looked like. You don't have to have a clicky joystick to play fighting games, but it felt really nice because it kind of emulated the feel of what you got from a normal arcade stick. So for a portable fighting game experience, this felt really premium overall. But enough about the battle mechanics and the handheld system and the clicky joystick. What you really want to know is, should you buy this game, The Match of the Millennium, SNK vs. Capcom, on Steam? At the price of $8, you really cannot go wrong. I can highly, highly recommend this game as a single-player experience. If you click Versus on here, it will actually load up a second emulator, and then you can actually play the game in split screen. But apart from this local co-op, there's no way to play this online, unfortunately. If you're not doing something like that, essentially you're just going to be playing this as a one-player game. And I think that even as a one-player game, this is super fun. I don't really approach this as a game that I'm going to be honing my skills so that when I go up against my friends, I'm going to beat them. It's more just like, I like fighting games, and when I'm not playing ranked in Street Fighter V or some other online game, this is just a fun game to play against the computer. For example, here's one character that I just never would have used otherwise, but while I was just going through the game, just playing it multiple times to try and win characters, I was like, okay, I'll just switch characters every single time. And I was like, discovered that I actually quite like playing Zangief. I mean, I was quite surprised, but I was like, wow, I'm gonna try things that I wouldn't normally do. I'm gonna play characters that I wouldn't normally play. I'm just gonna grapple my opponent until they die. And it is supremely enjoyable. So personally, that's how I feel this is the best way to enjoy this game, is as a one-player experience. And fortunately, as a one-player experience, it is jam-packed with features, which is not something you can say for a lot of other modern fighting games. This first one, Tourney, is when you play against the computer, and it's kind of like an arcade mode, and it's good fun because there's a story, and depending on which characters you choose, like, you get different character intros and stuff. You've also got the versus mode if you want to play local co-op against a friend. You've got Olympic mode, which is the mini games, which is actually, in my opinion, some of the most fun you can actually have with this game. You've got the sparring mode, so you can actually practice. There's this entry mode, which I've never actually used before today, but instead of having to choose your team every single time, you can go to my and choose my character or my team or my tag team, and you might have your own personalized win quote in there or something. And then finally, you can just check out your stats, you know, how well you've been playing in the game or how well you're doing in the mini games. So here's what you need to know about the gameplay. It's not just a handheld game that makes you wish you had the big full-on arcade version of the game. It is its own thing, and you really enjoy it for being a handheld fighter. And in a way, it almost gets you into fighting games better because you've only got 2 attack buttons to worry about, and the system works really well for getting people into fighting games if they weren't really into them before. But on the other hand, as an arcade fighting gamer, it is kind of frustrating sometimes to have to deal with the tap to press a light button or hold down the button to do a strong button, because it means there's a delay to all of your attacks, and that just doesn't feel nice if you come from modern fighting games. But if you can accept that that is what was required to be able to play a game like this on a handheld console, there is so much fun to be had. You go into the tourney mode, and you've got 3 different ways to play the game. You've got the Street Fighter system, where you just have one character versus one character. Then you have a tag team system, which is not available in any of the other games. This is actually a mixture of KOF and Street Fighter because you've got 2 characters each, and you can switch anytime you want, and you can use that to your advantage in the battle. And then finally, you've got the team mode, which is just straight up 3 characters played in order. The other person chooses 3 characters played in order, and it's just like King of Fighters. So it feels like the game mode that works best for this game really is tag mode. This is where you're going to have the most fun. And then you've got 3 groove, they're not called grooves, but they're like grooves from Capcom vs. SNK. So you've got average mode, which feels like Street Fighter. You've got counter mode, which is a lot like early KOFs where you get a super combo as long as you've got low health, and you could charge up the gauge by yourself if you've got free time-ish. And then you've got rush mode, which is a little bit like the later King of Fighters games, where you can actually build up stocks of meter. The next thing that's so impressive is the number of characters in this handheld game. Now, when you start off, you don't actually have all of these characters. Like on the Capcom side, you have 9 characters to start with, and then there are 4 unlockable characters. And it's the same thing on the SNK side as well. And unlocking the characters is good fun. I'll talk about that a bit later. Now, once you're in the game, it's pretty, it's pretty much what you would expect. You can move forwards, backwards, you can jump, you can crouch, and you can punch, kick, and you can do your special moves and your little mini combos and all that. But here's the thing that's especially fun about this particular game is being able to do this. Even in the middle of a blocking animation, you can use your gauge and you can swap out into a different character. Again, if you've played games like Marvel vs. Capcom or Dragon Ball Fighters or BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, you'll be familiar with systems like this. And the other thing is that now you've charged up this super combo, you can now do super combos like this. So there's the 2-button fighting game system. There's the fact that there's 3 different modes to play the game in. And then after you've chosen single tag or team mode, you also have 3 different grooves to select from. And then you also have a cast of characters which are half SNK and half Capcom. And that means you can choose a really fun team, which is a mixture of characters from both different companies. But then on top of that, what's really fun is just playing against teams. So for example, Guile and Leona, one from Street Fighter and one from King of Fighters. It never really ever gets old. Like going up against a team which is a mixture of characters from these games, they're almost never put together. It was really only in 1999 and a few years later when they did Capcom vs. SNK 2. That was like the only period that we got these 2 franchises merged together. What we really want is a new game where SNK and Capcom work together again. And we haven't had it. It's been like 20 years almost. Who knows if it will ever happen again. These characters blended together is never going to get old. So that's the fighting game itself. But here's where it gets even better. This thing just never stops entertaining you. So you go into Olympic mode, and this is where it gets crazy, right? SNK and Capcom, there are both 2 sides to this, and they all have separate minigames. So if you click on SNK, you get SNK themed minigames, and I only ever really play one of them, Target 9. It's so simple, and it's basically just whack-a-mole, but for whatever reason, it just never gets old, because it's quite tricky. So my goal is to try and get over 80, but I just rarely get over 70 in this game. It's hard. I think even if you've played this minigame for many hours, it just doesn't get old. Oh no! 57. And then after you finish and you've got a really rubbish score, character's a little bit snarky. Who could ask for more? Actually, one sort of thing that's kind of fun about this game, and I don't know if it's because it's made by SNK, but it's really fun-loving. So check this out. While I'm playing this game, if I think, okay, I'm going to pause this game and I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of coffee. If I press the options button on the console, the character actually gets pissed off at me. She's like, are you going to play or quit? I just don't see this in a lot of games these days. Little snark like this. There's a bunch of other minigames in here, but I only play Target 9, and to be honest, you only really need to play Target 9. Oh yeah, it's Dance Dance Revolution. It's not actually synchronized with the music. You can do better. I'm so disappointed. The snark. Like, I pay money for this. Listen, there's really nothing else to be said about this game that hasn't already been said. It's fantastic, and at $8, you really can't go wrong. It's cheap. The only thing is that in the modern era, to dedicate time to a fighting game, to make that worth it, it needs to have a good online player base. You need to be able to find matches and actually hone your skills and get experience. But this game only has local co-op, and so you can't approach this game as a tournament fighting game that you're going to get better and better at and use it to like interact with other people at tournaments. This is not that game. This is just a fun game that you can play in single player, and when you have friends come around, put it in versus mode, do the split screen thing, and it's going to be just hilarious fun. But like I said, my personal opinion is that to have the most fun with this game, just think of it as a fun single player experience that you can boot up anytime and just enjoy the fun of having Ryu and Kyo on a team at the same time, or Mai and Morrigan, Guile and Leona on a team, and Ken and Terry on a team. And it's not just fun putting your own teams together from different franchises, but when you're playing the arcade mode, the teams that you fight against are often a mixture of different characters from different franchises. And the one thing I can say is that it just never gets old. It was designed with an aesthetic, with a fighting system, which doesn't feel like it's just trying to be a big arcade game. It's trying to be its own thing. That's all from me. I hope you've enjoyed this quick look at Match of the Millennium, SNK versus Capcom for the Neogeo Pocket Color handheld. Again, it's so sad that the handheld didn't succeed, but it had an uphill battle against things like Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance coming out at the time. But before it disappeared, it graced us with this game, and also Card Fighters Clash, which I haven't heard anything about them making a release of that for Steam and Switch or anything, but I would really love for them to make that game, because that's another game that they made to work on a handheld, but it was so good that I would happily play it here on my monitor. I would like sit down and set my controller up as a home console experience. It doesn't have to be on a handheld. There are some games that just were that good. If you enjoyed what you saw, do subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Like the video if you can, that does help. And leave a comment. Did you play this game? Did you play the original like 20 years ago on the Neogeo Pocket Color handheld? Let me know in the comment section below, and until the next NihongoGamer video, I'll see you around.